All right, and we are live. Annie Vo, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really grateful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's really nice to meet you. So you came, I first heard about you from Colleen Conlon, who's been a guest on the show a couple times. And I know you've had some experience coaching with her. So she had raving reviews about the work that you guys did together. So I was really pumped to have you come on.
Oh, that's so great. I mean, Colleen is an amazing person, first of all, but she's an outstanding coach. And, the way that our kind of roads crossed I was very honored, let's just say that, to be able to be part of her process. Again, she was able to get the Guinness World Record for most weight lifted in an hour with Turkish Get Up. She's such a workhorse and such a like steely mind person. I just have nothing but good things to say about her. So it
Yeah.
feels good that she has something positive to say about me.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. So, well, I mean, you got a lot on your plate and a lot of different things that you've done. So, I mean, I've known you from the work you've done with the RKC as a senior instructor with PCC, as well as the work that you've done just as a coach in New York City for so long. So, I'm always curious about the origin story about how people get into this field of coaching. So, how did this all kind of first, get started for you of getting into health and fitness, which inevitably led you into getting into the world of coaching?
Oh, wow. As I shared with you earlier, I think I'm going to finally give the full story. I have kind of my sanitized version that's a little bit shorter. So this is all true, but I'm going to start from the very beginning, I guess.
This episode is brought to you by Paluva. Paluva is a new zero drop minimalist shoe with a distinctive five toe design. Paluvas give you the most authentic barefoot style experience, but with sufficient cushioning to use for all manner of everyday movement, fitness, and athletics. I've been using these new shoes in both strength training and my daily walks, and I have to tell you, they are by far the best minimalist shoe that I've come across. The popularity of minimalist shoes have been on a big upswing, but Paluvas are a step ahead of every other zero drop wide box shoe because of the critical feature of individual five toe articulation, a separate slot for each of your toes. This allows for correct dynamic movement of the foot through walking or running, which is impossible when toes are encased in a single box. Now, minimalist shoes have faced controversy in recent years about causing injury from inappropriate use. So the big picture mission is start walking and living in Paluvas as often as possible. Use your specialized running shoes, basketball shoes, work boots, or high heels when you need to, but wear Paluvas as much as possible to reawaken the natural functionality of the human foot to stand, walk, run, and perform. And Paluvas also have a sleek, cool design, so you get a barefoot shoe that looks great as well as feels great. And now you can try a pair of Paluvas with no risk and realize that these are the most comfortable shoes you've ever worn. They are literally designed to feel like you're walking barefoot on a putting green. So you can go visit paluva.com and use a code SC15 for a 15% discount off your first pair. That's SC15 at checkout. Thank you very much. Let's get to the show.
I was never an athlete or sports kid of any kind. So I grew up in LA and I don't know, swam at the beach and I rode my bike, but there were no real sports in my life. I was exposed to music at a young age, so I was a pretty accomplished pianist and classical bassist. Um, Simultaneously, I was going through a lot of trauma. I was, tortured physically and psychologically by my stepfather, who is a psychologist and a very sick individual. Uh, some of which the things that he had inflicted on myself and my family put him in prison for the rest of his life. So I had really learned to live outside of my body. You know, Music was an amazing outlet for my creativity. Um, I struggled with trying to find my footing in life, like in my town, everybody kind of knew what had happened. So I was like the town pariah. My mom was trying to survive and heal, and I had two younger siblings. So I was just a handful. And I basically left home early. I was able to earn money by playing music, teaching lessons, going on the road, and struggling with a lot of this personal stuff. So some of these questions: what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, what is reality? How could this happen to me, or how could this happen to people? And all these sorts of things. So I kind of naturally found philosophy, a home in philosophy. There's a framework for how to think about these big questions. Um, while I was doing music, it it kind of, I mean, I saw the writing on the wall. I think the life of a performing musician is really tough, and certainly really tough for a teenager while you're still trying to get your identity established. I kind of bonded the two, my identity and my ability to play music, and it
Mm.
just became um, so emotional and very challenging. So I figured it's time to go to college, finally go back to college. And I didn't want to study anything else but philosophy. So
Who
fortunately,
introduced you to that? How did you come about that?
oh man, I mean, I wish I could say that it was somebody or something, but I think it was just getting books from Goodwill or whatever. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and in the 90s, philosophy, Eastern philosophy, vegan diets, kind of these new agey moves were happening. So I feel like I was kind of steeped in the culture and became really hungry for that information. So I was very self-taught until I got into formal college.
Mm.
And I showed up, and it was everything that I had wanted and more. And I loved it. So again, living in my mind, basically. But I was really fortunate to move to New York. I went to Columbia. I got a full academic scholarship. Uh, and I was so, it's mind blowing that that even happened, because really I had no business being at that school for a number of reasons. I hadn't been in any sort of formal education since I was 14. My family had no money. I'd never even been to New York. I just knew that I wanted to live there. So I showed up and started school. Um, since I was on this academic scholarship, the only places you can go are the classrooms, your dorm, and the school gym. So that was the first time that I ever went to any gym. And my good girlfriend, Mercedes Sheehan, shout out to her. She's hilarious. She had a trainer before. She was in great shape. She showed me how to do a lat pull down. It became my social place. So I still don't consider that formal training in any sort of way. It was just a
Sure.
place to kill time and people watch and hang out. So when I graduated, I moved into a hostel. They just kick you right out. I moved into a hostel. I had gotten this internship at the district attorney's office downtown, and I was sharing this shower with, 10 dudes basically at this hostel. And I thought, well, I need a place where I can kind of shower, and maybe, these summers in New York are killer. You show up to the office with your clothes already drenched. Not a good look. So I got a job at Equinox. They said, you have no certification. You like being in the gym? Fine. Get the
Wow. Okay.
certification and we'll keep you. So I had this kind of A-B period of being at the gym as a trainer, a new trainer, brand new trainer, and then working at the district attorney's office. And I realized that I love being in the gym. I was confident that every single day I was doing something positive for someone, whereas the alternative, I wasn't really sure about that. And this is no shade towards attorneys. In fact, I have so much respect for them, because you have to be made of a certain constitution to
Sure.
be able
Yeah.
to deploy the law in a way that's, you know, fit and sane. And I just don't. I'm kind of too soft for that, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, it's a different type of skin. I mean, it's not really romantic. I mean, you're dealing with all the shit in that nobody really wants to deal with.
oh yeah. I mean, the first day at the district attorney's office, the DA was like, "There's no justice. There's just us." And I was like,
Okay. There's the principle. Yeah, there's the principle to start. Wow.
and
Yeah.
then I have my, fitness manager talking about external rotation, and we're going to do FMS, and we want to see where people are at, and, improve their movement quality, listen to them, provide support. It was just like, uh, it was it revealed much to me at that time. So I knew nothing. I was an open book. I got hooked up with my business partner, Antonio, who was the person who exposed me to hardstyle kettlebells. And I just took right to it,
Mhm.
coming from a very highly intellectual, highly kind of mental background, accessing my body in this way, it was a great vehicle because kettlebells require so much attention paid towards technique, breathing techniques, really being rigid. And this was like, what are we talking, 2009, the heyday of RKC rigidity. And I
Yep.
mean that in the most affectionate way
I
possible.
remember those days. Yeah.
So it really perfectly matched where I was at and made me feel like I could access this world in a way that was different than in other kind of athletic or training modalities because there was kind of a high mindedness element to it. And I could be the best technician and maybe not even be the strongest, but I could present myself as a professional with something, truly valuable.
Right. So this is interesting, Annie. So your kind of pathway into it, it wasn't from some real great feeling that you got from the body. It was almost more out of a necessity of like you needed the social outlet and then just, get a job at the time of just going through quite a bit of shit of just growing up
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's why, we talked briefly. Uh, at the time when I became a trainer, I didn't really think that this was such a great origin story. I was
Mhm.
around all these other trainers that had been D1 athletes or retired lacrosse players or all this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, this story is kind of not so great because I fell into it and it wasn't necessarily my choice. And kettlebells hooked me so much because I, again, could kind of approach it from a you know, rigorous analytical perspective. But what it did for me personally was allowed me to kind of live back in my body, feel things
Yeah.
in my body. And that was truly earth shattering because I didn't realize how long I'd lived away from my body. And I've certainly heard this before from folks that have been victim to sexual abuse where you kind of live away from your body because there's so much pain that's experienced there. And so a lot of their healing process trying to get back into that body. And I was pretty jaded. I didn't really believe any of that stuff.
Mhm.
And, after doing kettlebells and getting stronger and feeling things in my body, it unlocked this new dimension of just, feeling wholeness, I guess. And, kind of going beyond that, like any good thing, you can have too much of a good thing.
Sure. Of course. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then,
Especially when you find something that you feel benefit from
yeah,
physically. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. What
And I
was
got,
that feeling like as you said you kind of it was the first time you felt like in your body again and I'm assuming before it's like I mean it's one of those things like your mind is so good at callousing over specifically trauma like that where it's not something that I would assume is even conscious at the time. But that feeling or that shift that you felt of the benefit, what was that like? Was it very immediate or was it more of like a gradual, like recognizing that this was something different that you haven't really experienced before? What was that kind of transition in that process like?
I, I, I think it's very similar to the experience that, excuse me, our clients have where they work out every day and they know that they should be doing it and they're not having breakthroughs every day. But then once a year or once in a while, you get that story, where one of my favorite ones, my client who her and her family would go on this canoe trip every year and she's a pretty petite person. And the two couples would carry two canoes down to the lake every year for 20 some odd years, these great lifelong friends. And this year, she carried her and her husband's canoe by herself,
Love
you
those
know,
stories.
but
Yeah.
she'd been training for 10 years. I mean, and then finding little victories within the gym, but it didn't really set in until she had that experience.
Yeah.
So I feel like mine is the same in terms of that because I had focused on technique and trying to obtain these certifications and build my career. I was a brand new trainer. I didn't have any sports background, so I had a lot to prove. And so I didn't really experience that until, I mean, I really can't say, but it was one of those moments. Whether, I mean, maybe I'd say at the RKC, I don't remember honestly, but there was something that I had done, kind of for the first time
Hmm.
where I could feel like my, you know, chest heaving and my skin tightening in a way that I'd never felt before or never had been aware of. So
Yeah.
exactly to your point, we're not really conscious of these things, but it blew my mind. I was like, wow, I could
Yeah.
really fast forward many, many years later. So right before the pandemic, I was going to work in Union Square, and there, you get there at like 5 in the morning. There's a McDonald's there. It's pretty blacked out. And this guy came up behind me and started to choke me out and try to take my bag from me, my, whatever, my gym bag. And I went into my like deep breathing kettlebell hard style mode. I cannot explain it to you. It's like his body and my body became one. I could tell when he was like loosening his grip and tightening it, and his arm was around my neck. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity. The next time he relaxes, I'm just going to like brace myself like I'm doing the hardest swing I've ever done and throw him off of me. But I felt really calm. I was patient. I was waiting for that next rhythm to come up, and I took it. So laid him out, got the guy caught. I was fine. But that was that experience for me too, that my body automatically knew when we experience a certain amount of stress, this is what we do. We actually get calmer. We get more tuned to our breath. We
Yeah.
feel, things moving, and we, you know, take that rhythm, when you're swinging a heavy bell,
Yeah.
the bell's swinging you. So it changes from you putting all that power to get it to
Hmm.
go. And now you're like, okay, we are fighting each other. You're going to take me and I'm going to brace against. And
Right.
I'm going to go with that pendulum and meet you where you're at, rather than saying like, now I'm going to throw
Oh,
you
oh my
around,
gosh.
you know?
Jesus, Anna. Yeah. I mean, talk about the real world's experience of strength has a greater purpose, right? I mean, it's like being strong. You never know when that's gonna save your life, essentially, from there.
Yeah, it was wild, wild. And so there's so many different examples, but that happened like kind of recently. So I admittedly, from kind of that first experience to this more recent one, I had a lot of those
Mhm.
breakthroughs. Actually, I kind of went the other way, when I was kind of joking that you can have too much of a good thing. When I was really getting into kettlebell training, and now I'm like drinking the Kool-Aid big time. It turns out that I have a really high tolerance for suffering. So I was getting
Okay.
into Jim Jones training. I was doing the FY 300. I'm hitting those like, concept 500-meter records,
Yep. Mhm.
because I could go to that really dark place. So I learned all these tools, and now I could push myself to these really, really hard limits of suffering.
Yeah.
And that I had to have another kind of reformation of myself, because all of the benefit that I'd been getting from intense training or from hard style training, I had kind of gone past the point of benefit now. Now I'm living in that place that I'm used to living, the dark place,
Oh, okay.
you know? And so it kind of coincided with me selling my gym, that I realized, I built this thing. I had a hand in every step towards getting the members to do these hard workouts. I'm getting myself to do these hard workouts. There was kind of like a monastic sense when you came in the gym. We had no mirrors. You come in and you work. And that benefits a lot of people that don't have an opportunity to do that. But it also attracts a lot of people that do like to suffer,
Hmm.
and suffering for suffering's sake. And you kind of do it not to get in better shape, but to gain access to this side of you. And while there's some benefit to it, if you're trying to break your PRs, or you're trying to kind of sober up in a sense, if your life is kind of monotonous, you're trying to find purpose, some of those scary times can jolt you into reality. But if you're living
Right.
there all the time, then you're not growing from those experiences, you
Yeah.
know?
It is a weird balancing act because, I mean, from, RKC, from Strong First, like the principles of strength, there's such a benefit to approaching your physical training just like a working person. Sometimes you just punch the clock and it's a practice rather than a workout.
Mm-hmm.
But there is that benefit too of pushing, beyond not beyond your boundary, but testing your limits, a bit. I just had Craig Marker on recently, and we were talking about that, of doing like the
Nice.
Masogi, of like doing something that is really going to make you discover a different piece of yourself. And from this, I want to ask you about Jim Jones because I'm fascinated by Mark Twight and the work that he's done there. But it's a much different style or philosophy, really, of training in there.
Mhm.
So it seems like, yeah, it's good to visit that space, but it is that balancing act. If you live there too much, then it's this suffering for suffering's sake, which I think a lot of people do get into this thought of thinking this is what a workout's supposed to be. It's supposed to be this bloody, sweaty mess on the floor every time that
Mhm.
you train. And if it's not that, then it's something that's not beneficial at all, which in reality, it's really just the opposite.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting with the kind of rise of CrossFit, and so all these things were dovetailing at the same time. And you mentioned Mark Twight and Jim Jones. Oh man, I love them. And Mark Twight is the man. I mean, so many of his writings and his life experience, I was fortunate to have him as a mentor for some time. Again, his approach to training was really like, if I'm going to go up this mountain with my buddy with a certain amount of food, what happens if we run out of food or he dies? What
Yeah.
am I going to do then? And so,
I read Kiss or Kill, like his book, like maybe
yeah,
10 years ago. And I was like white knuckling my chair, like reading this book. Like it's like the insanity that this guy did. Talk about the training piece is one, but just the climbing and the work there. I'm like, oh
yeah.
my God, this is the most insane thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, so naturally he was the perfect mentor for me. I'm like, who is absolutely insane and willing to push the limits of, the psychology? Because again, a lot of those workouts are repetitive, or we're trying to hit certain targets, we're playing a game to hit a target because it's psychological. We're trying to cajole that out of the user.
Mhm.
We're going to push your body to the point where you will learn if this is the point where your body can no longer go, or if you're choosing to no longer go, and both outcomes have a benefit.
Mhm.
One is that you know your range. Okay, I'm
Right.
getting close to my breaking point, and I'm going to choose. I'm going to choose to back off. Because sometimes when you get there, you might have to choose not to back off.
Mhm.
But if you don't have any sense of what continuum of experience you have, it's easy to toss in the towel too soon, or to think that any sort of discomfort or any sort of barrier is the end of your continuum.
Mhm.
So a lot of the training is meant to kind of find where those limits are, not necessarily to find that suffering point, but you get close a lot. And
Yeah.
in order to get that, and obviously as you get in better shape and you get more experience, those boundaries get broader and broader. So it takes more time and more kind of unique uh sequencing to bring that side out of you. But again, it's hard to do that every single day, and you probably shouldn't do it every day. And he certainly wasn't advocating for you to do it every day.
Oh, right, exactly. Yeah. Well, I remember because I remember he got really famous and popular from the 300 workout when that movie came out, and it was the 300 reps, and all of a sudden, every single person in the gym was like doing that as their daily workout of getting in. And
Yeah,
it's like when you go back and read, it's like, yeah, no, this was a test that they did at the beginning and
yeah,
the end. In
right,
between, they did a lot of other training. This isn't just to be like the workout that turns you into Leonidas, at the Battle of the
yeah.
Thermopylae from there. But it's interesting, and you said like you realize you have a very good tolerance, for pain, and that you can take a lot. Do you think that that's really like all people? It seems like most people that I've seen who really push themselves in something, they go past the perceived limits that they have, but it's just that we don't test ourselves in that way. Maybe out of fear or maybe out of not really knowing what that boundary is from there. But I almost think that I don't know if that's more of the psychological side of training versus the physical, but it seems like that might be something that's within all of us. It's just most of us don't test it.
I think that you are right. I do believe that everybody has a capacity for it and a capacity to build it. And maybe there's some individuals that have innate capacity that's greater than others. But as human beings, I think we have been and have to be resilient in so many ways. So we have it in us, whether you find, and then here's where the psychology piece comes in. do you find value in discovering that?
Hmm.
And if you do, then you'd be more likely to explore it and probably have greater limits. If you don't find value in it, whatever your innate ability is, it's probably going to be a lot less when you try
Yeah.
to test it or when you start flirting with those limits.
Yeah.
Um, for me, again, it was kind of just like those early years of being disassociated from my body. It's pretty easy for me to turn it on and off. And when I'm on, I can live there for a long time. So for me personally, it was like a familiar shoe. And I'm like, I thought I was supposed to be like breaking mental barriers and, doing all this stuff. And I'm like, for a while I was. And now I'm like, kind of just, flatlining here and just going to this weird place. So,
Hmm.
um, did a lot of therapy and tried to pull back and recalibrate my workouts and try to figure out what's going on here. So, it was absolutely a valuable lesson because, kind of going back to kettlebells, I feel like the intensity also draws that type of crowd too. People, a lot of kettlebell people I'm sure you talk to, they've been through a lot of stuff. Each modality has the people that are drawn to it. And I think we all share that a little bit, this kind of like ability to suffer, whether it's through a history of abuse or some, combat or PTSD. There's certain things, but I find that there's kind of a commonality there in a way
Yeah.
that's different than other groups.
It is, and I think do you have like a welcome to the kettlebell world moment type spot when you realize it was something different? I've talked to a few. I remember, Hector Gutierrez had one of my favorites of like, a 12-kilogram kettlebell just completely humbled him. And this is a guy who has a 700-pound deadlift, now of going in and realized it was something different. Was there a moment that you had of when all of a sudden there's this new tool that I got and you're like, holy shit, this is something that's very different than what I was doing before?
Well, the kettlebell was like the first thing that I ever did. So I was,
That's awesome. Yeah.
bought in from day one. I didn't even realize there were other modalities. I'd see the bodybuilders. I'm like, that's not for me. They're moving pretty slow. you know, I mean, jokes on me. That's essentially how I'm training primarily now, mostly to be able to manage my fatigue levels,
Hmm.
because I do have a tendency to overdo it. So I need to make sure that I'm, training properly, eating properly, and then not trying to tap into this, dark mental crucible because that's not helping me as a middle-aged
Sure.
person in the same ways that it was, So yeah, kettlebell was number one for me. So I was bought into it early on, and I thought everything about it was so great because you had to have an initial buy-in. You couldn't do it mindlessly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does feel great when you can, humble anybody with this tool because you need to gain access to it. You can't just mess yourself up not knowing anything. You have to be good enough to hurt yourself, kind of.
Yeah, and it's that engagement too, right? It's like it's intentional effort and reps, which I think sometimes gets lost in the mix of, five simple ways to, lose weight or gain strength and stuff. It's like it's the engagement that you get in that builds the efficiency and the effectiveness of it. And I came from a background in baseball, which is such a timing and technical sport where when you're in the box and you're facing somebody throwing 90 miles an hour, like your only focus is on what's going on right there. And the difference between, where your elbow is and kind of where your weight shifting, it could be the difference between, a pop up or hitting a line drive and getting a hit. So I always saw that kind of same kind of synergy with kettlebell training of, oh, if I just do a clean this way, it completely changes how I press the bell and all those little details. It's kind of like the exciting stuff. It's like finding the little secrets in the details. And that was something that always just spoke to me right away. And, I've talked with other people who kind of had a similar process.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact that it changes, and this is the philosopher of me talking, and when you work with clients over a long time period, in the beginning, maybe they have trouble locking out their elbow. Then they have an issue keeping their lats packed. Then they have an issue with this. But then it kind of goes back in a circle. Like nothing
Right.
actually gets resolved. I mean, I don't mean that to be pessimistic, but it's like you're kind of sculpting your masterpiece. You
Right.
shade off a little bit here, you're moving it here. So there's an endless possibility to keep unlocking these secrets. And they might even be secrets that you unlocked before, but you forgot. Or now that it's in a different iteration because you have other muscles on board or it's a new a new psychological approach to executing the press, for example, that unlocks it for you. So I love that aspect of it, that you keep having that experience, even if
Right.
you're very experienced.
Yeah, is there have you found in your experience from both working with kind of clients, general population, but also you've trained a lot of coaches going into certification. Is there a technique that you found is a little tougher for the majority people to master? It's the one that just seems like it always gets away from people a little bit.
Oh, that's a good question. Hmm. I gotta say that I think it's mostly understanding kind of how serious you need to take it, like how big the buy-in is. Because if you get someone, or in my experience, when someone has had a lot of exercise experience, they come into it frequently with the attitude that, okay, I can just learn this tool. It's going to be very easy. I'm in good shape, or something like that. So the psychological buy-in is a little bit lower.
Hmm.
So the the challenge there is saying like, no, that let's treat this as a brand new thing. Yes, you're in great shape. That's going to put us in a good position to learn this rapidly. You know your body well, these sorts of things, but it really is something separate from what you've been doing.
Hmm.
So I think that for the folks that have experience going into it, and then for other people that don't have experience, just the level of intensity that it gets, like for a snatch test or something like that, they just don't have any idea how challenging that's going to be, and not necessarily. It's I kind of liken it to any standardized test. The SAT for the kids. It's not really a test of your intelligence. It's your test of how well you can study for the test. And yeah,
Right.
you have to be able to do some math and things like that. So there is some baseline intelligence, but it really is how well can you do this test. So for folks that are coming in that don't have a lot of exercise experience, they you have to be in shape. Plus, you have to be good for the test.
Right.
So they'll be getting in shape and feeling good, and they're like, "Why can't I do this?" And it's like, well, there's kind of a separate aim here. It's also to train for that test.
Yeah. Oh my, I remember a story a good friend of mine said with somebody who just signed up for a certification on a
Uh-huh.
whim and did the snatch test. He did a dead snatch, never learned how to snatch and had to do a snatch test and did the whole thing dead snatch. So dropped it to the ground each time and going. And I think he got to like 80 something before it was like over. But it's like, I think it was before the days of in Strong First, they do it on the third day, of the
Hmm.
test, to do it. But before, like when I went through the RKC, it was the first thing that you
Day
did.
one.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
day one, you meet everybody in a circle and then you grab your bell and then you go out and you do your test, you rest for a few minutes, and then you start the weekend from there.
Yeah.
So,
Your
yeah,
hands shredded.
a lot of things change over time. And I think they made that change because like, yeah, we need to, make sure people have some technique down before, we throw them through a 5-minute test where their heart rate's going to get jacked through the roof.
Yeah, 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 totally. And I mean, there's always one person that makes it into the certs, it seems like, that just, hey, let's try it out. But
Yeah.
it's true. I mean, when you look at the ad copy, it doesn't necessarily say you have to come in shape. It says that we're going to do these tests, but it's a little vague. If you don't know, you're like, okay, fine, I'll show up, I'll listen to the thing, and why not?
Yeah,
You
no
know?
doubt. Absolutely.
That's cool though.
So,
But that's why it's such a great test, because even if you come in shape and you do pretty good, I won't say every time you won't make it, but most times you won't. You'll get
right.
close, but that's the mark of a good test, that it does separate the folks that have not prepared.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those tests that I think is such a good standard because regardless of how strong you are, how fit you are. I mean, there's going to be a point where your legs are on fire, where your heart rate is really jacked up, your grip starts. So you're going to be in a spot that, okay, it's going to test your resolve at one
Hmm.
point. And I've talked to enough GS people now who do 10-minute tests for 200 that I'm like, the 5-minute test, I can't ever say that this is challenging, but it's still a challenging thing. And each time,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in this world for 14 years now. So I've done countless snatch tests now. Each one still is like you get to that market, like, okay, this is when it gets in there again and gets rolling. So it
Yeah.
is something that each time it's just it retests what you're capable of, and then you have the cough for a little bit and going. But it is like every once in a while, just putting yourself through that challenge, like you said, and and then go back to the working man type approach, for most
Yeah.
of your stuff, but go visit it every once in a while. But you
Hmm.
said something about being able to turn that switch on and off, which I always think is it. Do you have a process that you do for that of like, all right, this is what I'm going into? Like, is it a mental focus that you do, or is it more kind of just innate, like, all right, I know I'm going to be pushing right now and it's just time to go?
There's a couple things. I mean, in terms of the working out stuff, I have my warm ups, and I think warm ups are really important. And not that I do the exact same warm up, but I've used my warm up as a time to clear out my mind, and making the deliberate choice that now my outside of the gym life is ending, my inside the gym life is starting. And so if I can't get there in a reasonable amount of time, then I extend that time. And sometimes I don't get there, you
Hmm.
know. And I think it's important to have those times so that, like in the case of when I was attacked, it's automatic now because
Right.
you can't be conscious of your practice all the time. If you want to improve your posture or you're trying to do certain things. But when you pay attention to it and you intend to learn, you have to be 100% dialed in for that so that you
Hmm.
can stimulate those processes. So it's a little bit of both. It's deliberate practice to be able to get myself into that mental framework. And then, when the shit hits the fan, then I can turn it on because
Right.
I've already had that practice in place.
Right. Is that something that did you learn? Is that evolved over time, or was that something that you always kind of seemed like you had of like, going in, this is the time to clear my mind and really put this intention in? Or did that get better as you progressed, in your
Oh,
coaching in your life?
it got better through the course of practice. I didn't have a practice, again, I didn't do any sports or anything. So I had different mentors at Steve Maxwell, did RKC, Mark Twight, and getting their opinions on how one should go about a workout and what the purpose is, and trying it on for myself and seeing it with my clients. So in this process of seeing how it's benefited my clients, myself, it's evolved, with these basic principles that if you want to learn a new skill, that there should be some time spent where you're 100% focused on it. And it actually turns into a skill,
Hmm.
you know, it's amazing actually when you really think about it that whatever 5 minutes a day of a warm up can turn you into this machine that responds to stress in a very specific way.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's pretty cool. And so and then of course you do get better at it in time, as long as you keep reminding yourself that if I'm going to devote time to learning this, then I'll take it seriously. If I warm up on the rower, I have an intended pace in mind, and I don't listen to music, and I really want to see how does it feel when I'm hitting a 2 minute split or a
Hmm.
150 or a 215, and can I do that within 15 strokes or 20 strokes or 18? Can I do that for X period
Hmm.
of time and be really intentional about it?
Nice. Are there
It feels
specific
different stimulus, you
Sure.
know?
Are there specific practices you like better to kind of get yourself into them? And you mentioned rowing and kind of doing that focus. Is there any other drills or things that, you really enjoy of getting yourself into that zone?
Oh, I gotta say, I mean, I think this is like for my Jim Jones life. It's the bike or the rower or some sort of kind of conditioning modality because it's pretty gentle, and the physicality part of it is less demanding.
Hmm.
If you're warming up with get ups or windmills or things like that, you have to pay attention to the distribution of technique attention, and then mental attention is maybe the same, maybe even more technique
Hmm.
oriented. Some of these like machines, you really don't even have to think about tech. I mean, given that you have proper technique to begin with,
Right.
that you can kind of just let that piece go and be 100% in your mind.
Right. I love
So,
that. Yeah, I like that. I found too, it's like jump rope is always a one for me that just kind of gets rolling.
yeah.
But I've had a love-hate relationship with Get Up's Annie for like the last year.
So
It's
you're traumatized by Colleen's story. You're like,
no,
why would
not.
he do
I mean,
this?
Colleen, that her stuff is incredible of what she did. Like, because I was right when Jackie Vasquez was doing her work too.
Uh-huh.
They were kind of going back and forth. But no, I was training for Sinister for a bit. I took a little
Oh,
hiatus
nice.
off right now of getting in, but heavy get-ups are an exhausting thing, to go into.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's I think I found so much benefit from very light, very slow, intentional get-ups for just kind of, as you know, as we kind of talk about getting into your body, like something like a 16K bell of just like really slow through each movement, getting the entire range of motion and doing it in like a minute and a half or 2 minutes and doing that a few on both sides. Like that just as far as efficiency of just kind of keeping that time under tension, that's way better than trying to throw it. And, yeah, there's something to do in a 48K getup, and it's like you feel good and strong doing it. But shit, it's a different type of taxing of when you're doing heavy getups.
Oh yeah, I was chuckling because you too are a friend of the suffering because that just sounds agonizing. The slow get up with the weight that again, the mental training, every moment of that experience is probably asking yourself, am I going to stop because I'm just bored with this thing? Or am I going
Yeah.
to keep going because I'm getting a benefit? Or am I going to keep going because I started it? Anytime you're playing those psychological games, I feel like there's so much rich learning in there because you're learning yourself. You
Oh yeah,
really
no
get
doubt.
to know
You
what
know
you're
how
made of.
it's funny. You know how I started it is because I can't stand warming up. Like I want to get to the fun shit like really
Yeah.
quickly. So I would often just roll through it. And then the first 5, 10 minutes of kind of working sets really feel like that's almost an extended warm up where, as you said, like that getup it's so boring. And it's like it forces me to get myself in the zone. Just like you said, like there's no music at that time. It's like me trying to get breath connected, as much tension as I can in the body. And it kind of forces me to get into that mentality of that zone of doing something that I know is just really not fun for 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's not hard, but it's more of like that mental, challenge and pieces. And that was kind of, always asking like, what are the common struggles you see with people? I wanted to ask you that of like, what have you found like the most common struggles you've seen with people in consistency or kind of getting to their goals in health and fitness? I've often found it is more of just tapping into like that zone of engagement almost more than anything.
Hmm. I would agree. When I started training, I trained on the Upper West Side. And so the majority, that's where I cut my teeth. So the majority of the population I'm working with are 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus, retired professors, professionals. They weren't these like great athletes that, I was told that I would be working with.
Mhm.
But anyways, they're great. So what I realized in terms of this like psychological buy-in, so there's a couple pieces that you have to consider, when working with people that are just new to fitness in general, but now compounded by an individual who's 60 plus, 70 plus, is they've spent a lot of time not doing these things. So
Mhm.
not only is it foreign, but it genuinely it's alien. It's beyond alien. And not only that, that the risks are higher. They can't take as many chances. And you're getting
Mhm.
that messaging from every aspect of your life as you get older, right? They're like, you better not fall down, or you better not lose your grip, or you better not do these sorts of things. So coming from that perspective, you really need to get them on board with taking these small chances, such
Mhm.
as trying an exercise or trying to get up and down off the ground. I think in order to do that, you have to value the experience that they're coming with, even though they don't have direct experience with exercise. Again, you're talking about accomplished people that have lived a full life, raised families, had careers, uh, made some really difficult decisions, suffered tremendous loss. They have mental fortitude and they have strength mentally, and they are able to focus and they are able to excel. You have to
Right.
tap into that and help them understand that this is arguably one of the easiest things they'll ever do in their life. And they have the faculties and they have the ability to do it. They just need to reframe their, kind of outlook on what this actually is. It's
Yeah.
not this thing that is going to necessarily put you in this like incredibly risky situation that's 100% foreign to you. It's not foreign in the sense that you've done challenging things and accomplished things and set goals and achieved them before. It's just in a different modality.
Right.
You've kind of already won.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
that's a
and
huge
and
coaching tip. Yeah.
and the risk and the risk is not trivial. If you have never been up and down off the ground and you fall down, you could break your bones. I'm not This is serious. So
Hmm.
you as a coach, I think it's critical that you understand that they're trusting you to take this big risk or big perceived risk. You might have seen 100 people their age do X, Y, and Z, and that always makes me cringe when I see coaches say like, "Oh, but I have this client who's 75 and deadlifts 200." That's true, but if you're being honest, it took years to get there, or
Right.
you really can't do that to this poor person who is trying to trust you, who is trying to believe what you're saying. If you were to switch places, how would you feel? You have to respect where they're coming from and say, look, let's find those talents. Let's find those places where you've been successful and let's apply those principles here. This is like a
Right.
nothing thing, you know, squatting and push ups or whatever. We could raise you up, lower you down. We could do like that stuff is easy. Let's
You know, I
get you
think it's
invested.
I think it's interesting. I think it's one of the tough parts about being an experienced trainer is often you forget because now you've have just different experiences and different people that you've worked with that sometimes you forget where that person that you're just meeting is starting from. And I think it's one of the most challenging things as a coach to stay with on a regular basis is to meet somebody where they're at. And because, like you said, like, yeah, you might have clients that you've seen who are 65, 70, and all of a sudden now they're doing great, awesome things. But it took them time to build that up. Like, it doesn't mean that the next person who's just starting on the same journey is going to go along the same path that this person does. And it's a hard thing. You can get a little jaded. I just had a conversation with Chase Tollison on the podcast about this of I spend so much time talking with coaches and people who are in this field
Mhm.
that often I can get myself in a zone of thinking that everybody thinks like this all the time. Everybody's thinking about growth and about health and, lifespan when so many people are not in the world of doing that. So you have to always look at really the individual. Okay, where is this person starting from and start them into that exact point. Easy thing to say, but it's a challenging
Yeah.
thing to do on repeat.
Oh, challenging to do on repeat and then finding their strength just because they're new to this thing and they seem like, really inexperienced and novice here, they have other strengths,
Mhm.
Talking on this topic, I feel like great coaching on a very fundamental level is based on you. How many experiences have you had in your life? What trials have you overcome? You can't really take anybody somewhere that you haven't been in some kind of philosophical or emotional or physical way. So, obviously the coaches that train the San Francisco 49ers, those guys aren't running those lines, but they know the mentality it would take to get
Right.
there, or they've maybe done it when they were younger or something like that. So that is the very kind of most clear place where that translates. But when you're talking about civilian life, I learned so much when I started to travel to teach workshops. Up until this point, it was so easy for me to say, oh, well, when you show up at your your trip to Germany and you're doing your presentation for Deloitte, you're going to wake up and you're going to do these bridges and deadlift and blah 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 and have your salad. I got to tell you, if you've ever taken a flight over 6 hours, the last thing you want to do is go to that gym,
Yeah.
get do your corrective exercises,
Hmm.
like it's a very unusual person who wants to do that for a variety of reasons. You're dehydrated, you're in a different time zone.
Right.
It's not because you lack some sort of stick to itiveness.
Mhm.
And as coaches, when we are critical of our clients doing that, I feel like, okay, now you're trying to coach someone beyond something you don't know. I'm not saying
Right.
that you have to get an office job to understand what that feels like, but you got to kind of humble yourself. So I think a big part of being a great coach over the course of a career is to put yourself in what you perceive as really humbling experiences and understand how that way of life is. um, Getting a new certification within our field, while it's valuable, you're pretty comfortable already. There aren't going to be a lot of shocking things that happen anymore. You can't go back to your
Right.
very first RKC where you really are terrified and
Right. Exactly.
and you're feeling genuine imposter syndrome. So whether it's, going back to school or taking up painting or whatever it is, as a coach, I think it's crucial for you to maintain that humanity and understand that you need to humble yourself so that you
Yeah.
can broaden your experience of the human condition so that you can be relatable to lots of people
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
indefinitely.
Yeah.
Like you have to keep feeding that machine. You have to
Right.
scare yourself a
Well,
little
and
bit and humble
you know,
yourself a little bit.
speaking of feeding the machine evolution and really challenging yourself with stuff, I mean, recently now you've pivoted quite a bit. I mean, you're still doing coaching work, but now you're in a PhD program and doing a lot of work on the research side. Tell me more about kind of what's going on right now in the work that you're doing.
Oh, it's exciting and incredibly humbling. So right before COVID, again, at that point, I'd been a coach for 10, 15, well, maybe 12 years at that point. Well, whatever the case, I had my notes. I really felt like I had like a good body of work. I've seen clients for over a decade, seen their changes before and after babies, all these sorts of things. And you have all this information. I was like, what do I do with this? I know that I can help people get results kind of in the sense that there is the sets and reps portion of it, but there's this big kind of unknown portion of it. Is it because they believe what I'm saying? Is it because I've somehow fostered their ability to become autonomous? Is it because they like hanging out with me? Like, I don't know what that other gray area is. So I was drawn to this notion of learning how experiments work and how does science work. So I went back to do my master's in experimental psychology to learn the experimentation process and got really hooked into that. There's a lot of overlapping parallels with training, just in the experimental process, being methodical about what you're trying to test,
Mhm.
giving certain stimulus for X period of time to see what the outcome is. And the difference is, I mean, I guess it depends on the coach, but I was realizing that as a coach, you have this desired outcome and you're anticipating it. In true science, you're not anticipating it. You want to find evidence for things that are happening, but you don't
Mhm.
necessarily land on the fact. You don't say, now that we've found evidence for this, this is the truth. All you found is evidence for that, if that makes sense.
Right. Huh. This whole topic and get I mean this is a whole nother podcast that I would love to do on this, but that gray area you talked about I think is so interesting because there's so much new stuff about this program and this rep range for this or this tool of getting in, and it's all fun, it's all good, but still, like as I mentioned even before we started, like we're still not moving the needle as a culture of really helping people succeed. So there's something that's missing. And the question I was always asking is like, why is this still not being talked about or studied enough or researched? I don't know. When you've got into this work now that you're doing with the experimental process, is is there an answer to that of like what makes somebody succeed within that gray level versus another person on the psychological side? Are you seeing anything yet from the work that you're doing of maybe provide a little bit of light on it?
So many dimensions and so many branches within psychology that are trying to pursue different avenues to get at that question. My primary focus and interest is that communication piece. So there's kind of two parts to the communication. There's the intention of the communicator, the person speaking, and then there's the comprehension of the person receiving said message. And it's kind of interesting how different those two messages can be. So in terms of the research that I'm most interested in, and spoiler alert, I have no answers yet. I think it's fascinating in this new world that we have, apps and this disembodied voicing going on. So when I got into this, it was really interested in this like one-on-one communication or small groups and things like that. And there's a fair amount of research that has been done with memory in particular, where they have they did it between universities where they had like the guy from Yale speaks at Princeton and the Princeton guy speaks at Yale and tells a story, and then people take a survey to recall what they remember. The Yale people like the Yale speaker, they remember what he says. The Princeton people remember the Princeton guy, and so forth. But there's another piece. They also remember it if they think that they like that speaker. So even if it's
Mm,
from a different school, if they like that person, if they're credible, then they're more inclined to remember what that person's saying. So some of this memory work kind of touches on some dimension of this coaching piece where maybe if the person likes you, maybe if they think that you're credible, they're more inclined to remember what you've said. Understanding what you said, that's another thing that we're
Right.
not truly sure about. So that's kind of where I'm diving into. And then now this extra dimension of teaching tools that are digital or chat GPT or online dating where people have very salient, intense experiences with a non-human entity or with like a robot that is able to portray itself in such a way that it's desirable or friendly or meets interpersonal needs, so on. So now we're talking about what kind of messaging is this robot doing that's getting people to change
Oh
their
my
lives,
gosh.
want to exercise like it, and so on. So it's a pretty rich field that I hope to
Wow.
be
Yeah.
contributing to more. So we'll put a pin on that. I don't
That
know.
is, oh my God,
They'll
that's
be rejected at the gates. I don't
I
know.
that's freaking awesome. Oh
I
my God. Yeah. That's Did you ever see the movie Her?
don't think so, actually. Was this the one with what's his face? Okay, I'm terrible. No,
It's with Joaquin
okay.
Phoenix, and he kind of there's like this kind of like online girlfriend thing that he does, which is
Oh, okay.
it's like very like
Huh?
next level, but everything you're talking about there, like this feels like this is the direction that things are going on. It's such a the whole AI thing is just very interesting on that part. But yeah, I'll digress on that. Go watch it. We'll talk about it the next time we speak.
I know we're like at the conclusion of this conversation is either we're replacing ourselves with robots or I don't know,
There it
robots are
is.
going to give you great
A
results or
we'll leave it on a complete cliffhanger there. No, Annie, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for jumping on. I really, found it awesome just getting to know you and getting to hear your story, with everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, everything. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your insights today.
I appreciate you taking the time and I hope I haven't scared any listeners. I mean, this is some raw stuff and I haven't felt comfortable sharing it really ever. So you're
Yeah.
getting me in a particularly open and raw moment here. So I hope that people enjoy it and
Oh, no doubt. I got so much from you, and I'd love to have you back on to keep this going. I feel like there's a lot more that we can dive into.
anytime.
Awesome. Well, Annie, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Listeners, thank you so much. I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right. Peace.